Welcome to MSL Talk with Tom Caravela, a podcast specifically designed for MSLs and all things field medical. Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. My guest today is Marika Jonkman. She is a medical affairs executive coach from the Medical Affairs Leadership Institute, which is her company, and she talks to us about why MSLs should have a personal board of directors. So interesting concept. Hope you guys enjoy the conversation. Don't forget to check us out on MSL Talk Live, which is on Clubhouse the first Tuesday of every month at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Connect with me on LinkedIn, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hey, Marika, welcome to the podcast. How you doing today?
Hey, Tom, how are you? I'm doing wonderful.
Awesome. I'm really glad that you're here and excited. I think this is an interesting topic, and this was something that you had brought up to me. So guys, for you guys listening, I know Marika for a while, and we ran into each other at MAPS, and that's how this whole conversation got started. And we're going to talk about why it's important for MSLs to have a personal board of directors. But before we do that, why don't we do an intro? Tell everybody who you are and where you're from and all that good stuff.
It's great. Thank you, Tom. So my name is Marika Jonkman. I'm an executive coach at the Medical Affairs Leadership Institute. And I'm also a fellow at Harvard Medical School, where I look at the neuroscience of executive coaching through the lens of emotional intelligence. Basically means I'm looking at a lot of MRIs.
Yeah. Wow. Well, interesting. And I know you were an MSL, right? So your background, tell us a little bit about your background and your career, because I know that you came from field medical, correct?
Yeah. So I have a really non-linear career in many ways. So when I, grew up, I had a childhood friend who passed away from acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and that had such a profound impact on me. So I went into pharmacy school, did my PhD in pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. I always said, give me math and I'm happy, which is the opposite, obviously, of what I'm doing at the moment. But then I went into clinical developments, very much into, basket trials, umbrella trials, and, how to make those very effective for patients and get the drug to markets sooner. While I was in 2015, I was volunteering at Cornell Veterinary School, and they were launching a beta project in the what is now the Johnson Cornell Health Executive MBA. So I did some of their beta courses, and most of them were focused on coaching and leadership development. And that's really when kind of the flame started for coaching for me. That was also the time I moved into field medical, because I wasn't quite, satisfied. I knew I was making an impact, but I thought in field medical, we could make a much greater impact on, patient outcomes. So that's really what my motivation was to field medical. I did, I worked for a couple of small companies. I love working with small companies because it's very, dynamic. Then the pandemic hit, of course. And that was also the time that I finished my certification. I became first an ACC with the International Coaching Federation. I'm now a PCC, professional certified coach, and I'm working on becoming a master certified coach. And, I'm also at Harvard looking at MRIs. So that's very nonlinear.
I just hope I'm smart enough to keep up in this conversation.
Oh, I mean, I know you will.
No, I'm kidding. So, but those are great credentials. I'm glad that you came on. So let's get into this. So this is a new concept to me, is having your own personal board of directors. So can you explain that? Like what exactly does that look like? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a personal board of directors can be incredibly powerful. Basically, it's like an unofficial group of guides or a team of about, say 5 to 8 people that you can turn to when you have certain questions or concern. This group of people, they're here to help you, but they have a very wide range of insights that is much beyond, what one person can do. Organizations have boards of directors because they benefit from knowledge and experiences of a variety of advisors. So when you are navigating your career, when you are trying to get into a career, or stay in what is a very rewarding career for you, it's very important that you surround yourself with people who can help you at different aspects. And it's sort of kind of a little bit like having multiple mentors. So if you're very serious about progressing your career, you kind of have to make sure you kind of tap into the biggest, broadest, possible base of experiences and insights. So say if you're at the beginning of your MSL career, it's really important to have an experienced MSL, that you can turn to with questions, but also, for instance, somebody who works in medical information, because that's an entirely different perspective, or, clinical, because that too has an impact on how you can do your job. And when you understand better, you can provide better insights. So having this broad range of people around you can really, benefit you. They can give you feedback and, tell you about the pitfalls of where your career, where are you, lacking certain things. They can objectively tell you.
Yeah. So like, as I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about no different maybe from being a business owner. So as a business owner, I have an accountant, I have a lawyer, I have an insurance guy. So there's people that I've aligned myself with that support my ability to run my business and be successful in what I do. Is it the same concept? Is that what you're looking to do? You're an MSL and you're trying to find these different experts that can be there to help you navigate through your career?
Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail on the head.
Okay. And so would you consider these folks mentors? Is that, like we say board of directors, is that just another way of saying that? Because it's almost like you have your own posse, right? So you're developing your people.
Right.
So is it a collection of mentors? Is that the right way to look at it?
Yes, and maybe no. So
Okay.
mentors are, incredibly valuable. That's
Mhm.
when you have a good mentor, you really should cherish them very, very much. But mentors are, it's more singular, and it's, they're often not easy to find because it's so time consuming. So it's both time consuming for the mentee, but also for the mentor. Now, with a board of directors, the approach is kind of different. Because you have a wider range of people, it allows you to make much smaller asks, and therefore it can be less daunting on the people that you ask to. Say, for instance, if somebody comes up to me and say like, hey, will you be my mentor and can I talk to you for an hour, once a month? It's very different when somebody comes to me and says like, hey, this is my objective and I'm having this obstacle. Can I brainstorm with you, once or twice a year? That's a very different approach. So requesting, occasional inputs on a specific, area is just not as intense as a one-on-one relationship you have with a mentor. Now, that doesn't mean that this person can't become a mentor. I have one of those that really, when I started out with my career was just, an occasional sounding board. And now we are talking on a very regular basis, and it's much more, broader. So even though I have a mentor, and even if you have a mentor, having other board of directors can be very helpful, because there's not one person that can exactly, live your life and see exactly all the obstacles. We don't all know it. So having more people is more helpful.
Okay. So then can you elaborate for us on who MSLs should be reaching out to? Not obviously not people, but types of functional roles and people with different responsibilities and titles. Like, what, if you can elaborate, would people really want to have on their board of directors?
Yeah, that's a great, great question. And it 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 also depends a little bit. It's a little bit, situational and individual, and it also will change over time. And that's okay. Say if you're, very early career, you're just starting, and you don't really know all the aspects of what it takes to be an MSL. Getting, a couple experienced MSLs may be very, helpful for you. Whereas when you're progressing to through your career and you want to see more options in where you want to be in 3 years or 5 years, you may want to expand to different departments and more leader types. So the first thing you really have to think about is, where do you want to go? What is your goal? That's and then when you have your goal, think about, what are the opportunities you have to reach that goal, but where are your obstacles? Where's the knowledge gaps or the skills gaps, or, um, and who can help you fill those particular gaps? And maybe, you don't know what you don't know. So sometimes it's very helpful too, to just have a person very objectively talk with you about that. And I also want to caution, because there's one mistake that we often make, and that's that we rely on close friends and family to give us advice, and they are biased. That's your family, your friends, they always want to have, your best interest at heart. And so it can be difficult to see, what you may need. So having somebody who's a little bit more distant can more objectively look at that and see, hey, these are the steps you need to take in your career if you want to advance to what your goal is. Just like,
Got you.
like you said previously, companies seek, different board members. You need somebody for IT, or maybe, sales, marketing, as a company. So make it a mix.
So you spend some time with yourself. You decide, okay, here are my goals. Here are where I think my gaps are. Here's where some of the challenges I'm having. Let me go see if I could seek out some folks to be on my board of directors. So then, how do you approach these people?
That's a very very good and very, tricky question, of course, and it can be very hard for anybody to just reach out. So the first thing I would do is, like, who in your close environments, who do you already know, and who do you admire for this? And I wouldn't get too close, but say your uncle's best friend is great at, investing, something that's investing, your money. That's somebody far enough but close enough that you can reach out to. So, see if you can get an introduction. A warm lead, of course, is always better than a, cold call. But sometimes you have to do that cold call. So when you have identified, the right person for you, I usually, send a message, email, or message on LinkedIn, and I simply ask. I'm very clear about, why I ask them. I say, hey, these are some of my goals. This is where these are my obstacles, and this is what I'm struggling with. And are you willing to spend some time with me and reflect on this, and maybe help me forward? I try to be as clear as I possibly can from the relationship. Of course, I also bend over backwards to make sure that I add value to the relationship as well, that we make this a two-way street. Maybe not necessarily at this particular time, but in the future, I will make sure that they have value from this.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I think that LinkedIn's, first of all, a great tool to reach out to folks and break the ice if you don't totally know the person. I think that it's really important, like you said, try to name drop and use someone's name. So-and-so, Tom Caravela told me to reach out to you. He said you'd be a great person for this, or you're an expert. I think it's always nice to offer a compliment right off the bat. It makes people feel good. But I agree with what you're saying. I think it's got to be a two-way street. You can't come in like a steamroller and say, hey, I have all these problems and I need your help. When can you be available? I think it's more like, hey, got your name from so-and-so, mutual friend. I'm really impressed with your background. I know you're an expert in this. I was hoping maybe we can have a quick conversation. Perhaps I can be of help to you in the future as well, whatever. Because I think that disarms people. It makes them say, oh, okay, yeah. And now you become a part of their personal board of directors, or at least a part of their network, for lack of a better word. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I agree with you too. There's a difference between expectations and agreements. When you have expectations, you set yourself up for disappointment. Whereas when you create agreements, with people, you have a mutual, satisfaction, benefit from
Right.
it.
Yeah. So let's fast forward a second and say that you have been successful in establishing this board of directors, whether it's you're still building it or you have enough people that are on it that you're kind of up and running. What would you say someone's expectations should be? What does that relationship look like? How often are you talking to them? What does that look like?
Yeah. So that really has to be that agreements that you have with your, director, so to speak. And to just, for me, there's some that I only talk with like once or twice a year. Sometimes, I just had a particular issue and it was really, taking up a lot of space in my mind. And I spoke with my one, director probably, I don't know, 3 times in 1 week. But then, we hadn't spoken for about a year, before that. So contrary to, official mentorship where you really have set times that you bring up things, for me, it's really more like, hey, say for instance, Tom, you're part of my board of directors. I would send you a message like, hey, Tom, any chance we could catch up? I have this particular problem I want to bounce off with you. And then we, find a time that mutual agrees. So, and what's very good about your question too, it's not like everybody has to come together, in an official meeting. You don't even have to necessarily tell them, hey, you're on my board of directors, but more like, oh, well, can we have this conversation quickly?
Yeah, it's like you're building your network of
Yeah.
trusted advisors,
Right.
making it reciprocal. And then you keep in touch with those folks over the course of the year.
Yeah.
They help you, you help them. I would probably even suggest seeking out ways to try to do favors for these folks and be a good resource for them whenever possible, because then you feel better about that reciprocal nature of the relationship, so that when you do have a problem and you go to reach out to them, there's a sense of indebtedness because you've held up your end of the bargain in that relationship. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. And I would say if you're in it for all the right reasons, everybody wants to help somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
That's our human nature. We're
Mm-hmm.
always happy to help other people. But over time, these relationships really grow into a mutual, a two-way street. And it's really wonderful, to see. Of course, some relationships, as you're progressing through your career, some may fall off a little bit, others get a little bit stronger. But that's just the nature of most relationships, right?
Well, absolutely. And I think this concept may even start with your manager. And what I mean by that is I think that you need to be aware of what your gaps are, like you said before, maybe what your developmental needs are. And if your manager is clear in their one-on-one sessions or reviews or whatever, and you realize that there's some areas of improvement, well, you start with your manager. Your manager can be a good resource. But then as you know what some of these gaps are, and maybe there's blind spots that you have that all of a sudden you become aware that you have this blind spot. Well, who might be able to help you with that? Think about who you admire, maybe they're on your team, maybe they're on another team. Maybe you saw somebody on a video or a podcast or somebody at a conference, and that person might be in position to help you with that blind spot or with that gap. That is, I think, how you build up your network. At least that's what I'm thinking through. Am I oversimplifying this?
No, not necessarily. I think, your manager and your peers can be very important sources of feedback. Sometimes it's hard to then discuss the obstacles that you have, you know, with having some reservations. Some people get a little defensive, but then to find, once you have that feedback, find others outside where you can bounce that off, and who can give you real solid additional feedback, and how you can overcome those obstacles and turn them into opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to point out that I did an episode on informational interviews, which I thought was really good. And it ties into this, because the concept behind informational interviews is you're going to somebody, whether it's someone on your board of directors, or somebody that's a mentor, or somebody that's just a colleague. And you're setting up some time to basically set up an informational interview to learn about something, whatever it might be, whether it's an opportunity, a specific job function, or a part of the job. So that's, kind of a shameless plug for people to go listen to that episode, because I think it really ties into what we're talking about. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't totally aware of the fact that there was a formal word for what that was. I just thought it was a conversation with a mentor. But I also wasn't aware that there was such a thing as a personal board of directors. So I'm learning through this through this podcast. What else can you tell us, Marika, about this personal board of directors as you look at your career and you grow your career? What is there a goal? I mean, do you want to have 6 people, 8 people, 10 people on this personal board of directors at all time? Like, where does this go?
Yeah. So I, speaking from a personal perspective, like I said, my career was non-linear, clinical, field medical, coaching. There've been lots of changes over the years, which also meant that, different people contributed at different times, different amounts to me. So I think it's very important that you reevaluate. We had this conversation, I think maybe a year or so ago, where you said that you should review your resume on a quarterly basis. Likewise, you should review your goals on a quarterly basis, and see, where are you going, and trying to find people to help you in those particular things. So yeah, I have about I think 7 people that contribute to my career, to my development, and I'm of course very grateful for them. And but over time that also has changed, and likewise I have contributed to other people, but now I'm not contributing as much, because I went into a different direction, and I don't have as much to add to their lives at the moment.
And I'm just curious, like with your own personal board of directors, so you have 7 people on your board of directors. Do you send them, gifts during the holidays? Do you send them cards? Do you keep in touch with them? Like, obviously you want to nurture this relationship because it's important. So what advice do you have for people to just stay ahead of that relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm a very big postcard writer.
Okay.
I really, I really enjoy receiving and writing postcards. So yes, for Easter, I send Easter cards, or text messages with a little GIF. I don't necessarily send gifts for Christmas, birthdays, of course, if I know anniversaries, or family members when they are having important things, I always make sure that I reach out and say like, hey, congratulations, or happy birthday, or happy whatever the holiday is that they celebrate.
Yes. Well, I think in this day and age, it's so easy to do that because we have text. And there's LinkedIn. So when someone announces that they just got a new job, it's so easy to congratulate them and wish them well through LinkedIn, or through text. And, there's Bitmojis and there's emojis and there's all these these OGs that you can send to people to put a smile on their face. And I think that that's just really important because staying in front of your network, I think, is vital to the success of your career long term, not just with your board of directors, but with anyone in your network. You want to make sure that you stay relevant to them, and you stay visible to them. So I think it's important to kind of take time whether it's each week, each month, but definitely at least a couple of times a year. Just like you said, you want to revisit your resume or your CV on a regular basis. You want to make sure you revisit your network of contacts, board of directors on a regular basis, including and especially, I think the holidays are really important. You don't want to forget people during the holidays. So final thoughts, what other advice do you have for folks as they're developing their career, and they're looking to be successful MSLs?
Yeah. Don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay.
That's one of the things that I always, see people have this, a little bit of hesitation about, reaching out to people. And I just say, no is what you already got. And yes, it's something you can get. And it's perfectly okay for somebody to say no, but who knows, maybe you'll get a yes. So don't
I think that's great advice.
Yeah. Don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate, this was a very interesting conversation, and it's made me think like, oh, geez, I think I got to up my game with this stuff. So thank you for coming on, Marika. This was awesome. I appreciate you, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for having me. And as always, I love your podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. All right. We'll see you soon. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe so that you don't miss episodes in the future, and feel free to leave a rating or a review or a comment. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.